Hey guys, this is my latest viewer's choice review, and this film was picked by Celine Cliff, who's a follower of the channel on YouTube. So thanks Celine for the choice. And on this video, I will be reviewing Orphan from 2009. So this is a horror movie. I think I'd seen it previously quite a while ago, or at least some of it. I'm not sure if I watched it all the way through at the time. But the film's on Netflix in the UK if you want to check it out for the first time. But yeah, I'll start with the setup and then I'll let you know what I thought of the film and my overall sort of takeaways and sort of feelings. So it's a pretty standard horror type setup where you have this couple played by Vera Farmiga and Peter Sarsgaard. He's John and she's Kate. And I have to say off the bat, I kind of hate Peter Sarsgaard because he is, of course, Mr. Maggie Gyllenhaal, and a bloody talented actor to go along with that. So that's really annoying. Not only is he married to Maggie Gyllenhaal, but he's quite brilliant as well. I have to be honest. I can't lie. So they play like the main couple of the film. And as we discover over the course of the film, they have their own kind of like past where they've had stress in the marriage, certain revelations. One, for example, is the fact that she is a recovering alcoholic. He once cheated on her with another woman, so they're kind of like rebuilding their relationship. They already have two kids, a boy and a girl. One of the girl is essentially mute. They have to sign with her to communicate. And there was an incident many years ago with the girl where they almost lost her, and that's still very raw. So at the start of this film, they adopt a new child. They adopt this child called Esther, who is the orphan of the title, and she is played by, if I can find the name, Isabel Fuhrman, who I looked up on Wikipedia. The other thing she's kind of known for, apart from this, is she was in the Hunger Games film, apparently. Been a while since I've seen that, so I couldn't really think of who she plays in that, but she was also in that. So she plays the title character in this, as I said, Esther, who's like the orphan they get from like a sort of like a convict, and they take her own and home, and it's the standard horror setup where at first everything seems fine and they're really happy to have her. She seems to settle in quite well, although the boy Danny from the get-go doesn't like her. He's just, whereas the sister, the young girl, Max her name is, actually warms to her. They hit it off quite early, and you get like Esther learning, communicating with her through sign language. So apart from the fact that Danny, I guess, just being, kind of territorial and not really wanting a new person in the family, apart from that, she appears to settle in all right. But then, with this being a horror movie, there turns out to be dark secrets in her past, and things start going awry. And as we move on through the film, certain like family secrets, certain skeletons, let's say, are like brought up, and these things are played on in the drama. So that's the setup. And sorry to say, Celine, I really didn't like this film. I thought it was quite dumb at times. Very, very lame. Because when I watched it originally, I remembered it not being too bad. I mean, not being great, but I seem it might have been because I only saw it in bits, but I seem to remember it having some kind of like well crafted sort of scenes. But yeah, I rewatched it fully tonight, and no, it just didn't do much for me. It was kind of all over the place, and just not very credible. So I'll go through my problems with it. First of all, I should say the director is Jerome Collet-Serra, who's directed a bunch of other stuff. I mean, his CV doesn't really stand out as being that outstanding. He directed that Liam Neeson action film, Unknown, which I saw, and it wasn't actually too bad. It was kind of like, as far as like a bad movie goes, I think it was quite enjoyable and had some sort of charm to it. But whatever. I think his CV overall is pretty weak, but there you have it. I think definitely his direction is a big part of what's wrong with the film. But I'll start with the Esther character because that's part of the problem. Isabel Furman, and I don't know if it's how she's being directed because watching this film, I don't think like any of the actors are like given really good direction. Um, but yeah, she's just not very good at all. First of all, she's meant to be Russian. Now we find out later that actually it might be another country she's from originally because it turns out she might have been lying from because she claims she originally was raised in this orphanage in Russia, and that turns out to be a lie. But whatever. I mean, later on, another country is mentioned in like Eastern Europe, but the fact of the matter is, it's a really like wonky foreign accent she's doing. It's just like this stick-on sort of accent. Um, and the problem is, she has so many lines in the movie, then it just kind of becomes like comical because she has like this fake, phony, like foreign type of accent. It does actually make her sound like a very cartoonish sort of villain. Um, and there's just no subtlety in the fact that she's obviously going to be evil, villainous, there's going to be dark secrets, and that she's going to be a danger to this family. And I think that's part of the problem is the fact that the film really doesn't try enough to have this mystique to her. It doesn't do enough to convince you then okay, she might just be a regular sort of gal who's had a rough life, disturbed. Obviously, because of it being a horror movie and the setup, you sort of know then there's going to be something like shady about her. But at the same time, I think for the sake of tension and drama, for the film to work, it has to be a bit more subtle and a bit more of a gradual build. And I mean, first of all, the name Esther, yeah, kind of a spooky style name. When they first meet her in the orphanage, she has this very gothic, kind of like stereotypical, like spooky, like young girl type look to her. She talks in a very like telegraph sort of monotone sort of way. Um, she's yeah, just from the word go when she first meets John, she's just talking in a very like creepy, eerie sort of way where it's just signposting then this is going to be a very like dominating sort of character. This is going to be a very yeah, unbalanced, unhinged like type character. You know, she's painting that picture in like the first scene we see her. She's dressed all in black. She does like weird things, like she dresses in a funny way when first day she goes to school, and she just has all this kind of knowledge which it finds out is weird. Um, and I think that's part of the facade, the fact that that's how she kind of fits in so easily at first, is the fact that she's taking an interest and she's doing these extra things. But at the same time, just her appearance, the way she acts, and some of the dialogue, there's just no attempt to really disguise her and for her to fit in. And really, I mean, over the course of the film, she doesn't really. Obviously, she comes up with these schemes, and she's very conniving, but she doesn't really try that hard to sort of hide these things, or she keeps acting in a way which is just going to draw attention in a way. Um, but there's things where she's kind of, as I said, she does come across like the way she talks. She doesn't talk like a child, which okay, I'll get to that in the twist. But um, yeah, it's sort of at times a lot like a regular adult. And yeah, it comes across a lot like just like a comic book villain, the way she's acting, sort of thing. She doesn't seem like a particularly scary or eerie type presence child. It's just they've just made all this effort to dress her up and make her look at like just kind of like this creepy sort. They're trying too hard in a way. It's a bit like how in movies you'll get like a girl who's like realistically very attractive, or and in the storyline she's meant to be frumpy, and to try and convince you that she's actually like frumpy and not that attractive, they really go to town with like glasses and like braces, maybe certain little objects to try and just do. And I mean, normally it just never works, and this is a similar thing. um yeah, they really go to town on this girl. It's just not. And to make matters worse, the actress is really bad. She's really wooden. And as I said, these lines she comes out with, at times they're quite comical. So maybe that's something the film has going for you, because it doesn't really work dramatically or as a horror. At least maybe you can have the odd laugh. So there's a scene where she catches like the Famiga and Sarsgaard husband having sex in the kitchen. So you get the impression this couple haven't been intimate for a while, and they actually it's a really random scene. I mean, it's pretty full on, but they're actually having sex in the kitchen. I mean, you've got a bedroom, why not go to the bedroom, for goodness sake? But I guess they just couldn't wait, so they're pretty much into it, ready to do it. And lo and behold, Esther comes along, um, and it's sort of later when like Kate is having has a chat to Esther about like the facts of life and about adults and sex, where Esther just comes out matter of factly and says, "I know, sometimes they fuck," respond adult. And that really shocks Kate, and she's really taken aback. But yeah, lines like that are actually quite amusing. But yeah, I'll talk a bit more about stuff like that, because that's kind of the first time where Kate is just like like taken aback, as I said, and she starts suspecting that something's going on with Esther. Um, and I guess I'll talk about that because some of the contrivances, some of like the way they force drama is stuff like that. It's really weird the way Kate reacts to stuff and starts. I mean, okay, after a while, it's pretty obvious that this child is kind of crazy and there's dark stuff going on in her past. But at the same time, there's definitely overreactions from Kate and from characters in these films. I mean, it's the sort of film where there's no real build up to anything. A character will be just one thing 1 minute and then just takes a massive leap the next. So Kate, she's questioning like Esther just because of that, just because of coming out with the word fuck. And the Sarsgaard, John, his character is trying to persuade her. Well, she probably heard it at school. And there's another scene where Kate walks in on her playing the piano like just perfectly, and there's been an earlier conversation where she said, would you like me to teach you piano? And Esther says, oh, I love that. So that's kind of revealed to be a lie because she turns out she's really great at piano. But just stuff like that just pushes the buttons, and Kate is like really suspicious, which is kind of like contrived. But the other problem is, I think this film ticks off a lot of like just cliches off the boxes, because one which is a glaring one is the fact that you get like the mother or the husband and wife, and one of them, that being Kate, soon gets very suspicious of Esther and thinks there's something wrong and they have to investigate. And the other one, Sarsgaard, who I have to say looks quite bored in this film for a lot of it, he's the opposite. He's like, no, there's nothing wrong here, you're reading too much into it. And it just cranks that up to like an absurd sort of level where these things keep happening, these dramatic events, and the wife keeps trying to get his attention and point it out. And you get this added drama because of her past with like recovering from alcohol, because of some of the trauma of things that have happened. They lost another child. So just some of that stuff, it's just, you can see why it's there, but it's also just these extra bit of forced contrivances just to create drama, and just to excuse like people's reactions in the film. But as we get towards the end of the film, it just gets really kind of frustrating, the fact that it's the sort of film where for a lot of the film no one believes Kate. She's the only one who's suspicious. Apart from the other two children, they know that like mad shit is going on because they've seen it for herself, and Esther has been manipulating them and threatening them. You even get like this therapist character, Alice, I think her name, played by Margot Martindale. Another really good actress. Some good character actors in this film. You also have CCH Pounder, who I like a lot, who's in a brilliant 80s film called Baghdad Calf. I highly recommend that, but she's always good whenever she's in a film or TV show. So she plays like the sister Agatha, who's the sister at the orphanage who like introduces them to Esther. So some good supporting cast here as well. But yeah, the therapist, when they take Esther in to like talk to her and stuff, the therapist sides with Hester as well, and kind of says then she thinks the problem might be with Kate. Then she's like putting up barriers between her and Esther, and the husband then takes the therapist side, and you've got to feel for Kate. It's kind of like, yeah, there's this evidence to the contrary, and yet no one wants to believe her. And of course, they finally do later on in the film at the end, but by that time, it's kind of too late, if you like. But yeah, it's just too convenient, too forced. And there's another example of which actually I'll mention a bit later because it's to do with the twist, but of what I'm talking about with characters like going from one thing to the other just too quickly and too forced. But another problem is then rather than this having like the feel of like an atmospheric sort of horror movie or anything like that, like some of the stuff that plays out between like the kids in this, it's just really forced drama. Really, I think what you get is like a series of set pieces, but they just feel like set pieces from a regular film rather than like horror set pieces. The one I quite like actually, and it's like a setup before something happens, but they're at the playground and you get like this bully girl who's like bullied Esther in a previous scene. And she's like the camera actually follows her, tracks her along like I'm not sure if it's a slide, but like a climbing frame or something like that. She's walking about, and it's quite a slow, creepy sort of scene where Esther is like waiting for her, and I quite like that shot of her just on her level, like wandering around and like looking around corners and stuff. That was quite well done, and then the kind of twist is that Esther then knocks her off to the floor. But anyway, that was quite well done. But you do get like these really, they're more like just like over the top type stunts and kind of like big horror type jump scares. So you get when Kate drives them to school, like she's distracted by something with Danny, and then she's left the handbrake on, and Max is still in the car, and so then Esther knocks the handbrake off, and it goes careering down the hill, and it almost kills Max basically. And again, Kate's jumping up and down, and she's telling like John in the next scene, no, I definitely put the handbrake on, and of course he doesn't believe her again. But yeah, there's stuff to do with the fact that he had an affair in the past, and there's like this flirty like mum of this girl who I think's the same girl as she knocked off the slide. But it's just all silly, quite soapy stuff just to rack things up, and too many sort of convenient moments. So Esther overhears like them kind of flirting, and she like then mentions this later, I think, to Kate, although we don't actually see that, and that leads to a fight. So she's like stirring up trouble. But I think because it's kids kind of doing this, then it all looks kind of silly at times, and it just feels like random set pieces without much tension, without much style. Because he's not a very good director. That's part of the thing. This just looks like a regular film. There's no atmosphere, there's no mood, there's nothing distinct about it. It looks kind of like a typical, almost like 90s type thriller, but without any of the style of a good 90s thriller. Like the setting has no kind of like mood to it. There's nothing particularly like special or ambitious about the direction. Nothing really, like the kills are quite kind of sloppy as well. So we get the one with Sister Agatha, the CCH Pounder character, where she's killed, where we see Esther start to manipulate Max, where because she's cottoned on to the fact that Sister Agatha has like raised her concerns. So she gets Max and like pushes her in front of the car, which then makes her career off the road. And then when CCH Pounder is like seeing to Max, then the hammer comes out, knocks her out, and again, some of this is explained in the twist later, but they then move the body, and you're like, oh, come on, how? Because even though the twist does kind of explain this, you're still thinking, come on here, this kid's doing all this stuff. It kind of looks silly. And one of these moments that looks like really bad, I think, is that later on in the film, when things come to a head and Danny and Max are trying to work together to prove that Esther is up to no good. They go to like this tree house to where all this stuff of hers is that can like incriminate her. So Danny tries to get the stuff, and then Esther just threatens him, and then actually sets fire to the tree house, and Danny like barely escapes, and he ends up going to the hospital. This is like coming towards the finale of the film, so he barely survives. But just that scene, I mean, him on top of the treehouse, the fire, him jump into the, it all looks very phony. I think you can tell it's a stunt double of him as he lands, and then you get this really contrived scene in the hospital, and just characters acting really dumbly. So at one point, Kate's mother, who's there, she lets Esther out of her sight, the dumb bitch. And then Esther goes off and almost kills Danny again. Chokes him, and they barely survive him. And that's when things come to a head, because Kate just loses it and slaps her. Like, what did you do? Slaps her. So she's then like drugged and like kept in overnight. And that opens up the Skarsgård character for some bad kind of shit, because I have to say it's funny seeing Skarsgård as like this supposed sort of good guy, because normally I'm used to him playing very sleazy sort of characters. So I did have trouble. He's a good actor, but I guess it's just unusual seeing him play essentially a straight kind of everyday sort of guy. But obviously you've got two good leads in Skarsgård, and Farmiga's really good. She's excellent. She's always good. Of course, she is in a more notable horror movie, which is like The Conjuring and the sequel as well, which I'll probably do those movies at some point. Probably do the whole franchise and the spin-off. So that's something I'll do probably quite soon, actually. But she's impressive when you see her on Bates Motel and other movies. She really is versatile. She can do many different things. She can play, like in this, the sympathetic, fragile sort of mother. She can also play very manipulative, twisted characters. So she's got a real range. She's very convincing. And obviously in this, she's not really allowed to shine. But she kind of does her best with really, really poor material. But yeah, there's no tension. The drama isn't very convincing. the kills and the horror moments are really, really sloppy. As I said, I think the actress Isabel from Firma is really bad. I thought Danny was pretty bad, that actor as well, but I think a lot of it might be the director and kind of how the actors are being directed, because even like Faminga and Skarsgård that don't feel like they're on top form here. They're sort of doing their best, but I'll talk about the twist because at least it's quite novel. And the twist is that because Kate does some like fishing about, and she comes to find out then she that I forget Esther. I'm gonna think of Esther Ranson now, but Esther actually came from an insane asylum in, I think it was like Latvia or one of the eastern, but anyway. So not from an orphanage, from an insane asylum. So she does some more digging, and she gets a phone call back from the place, and the guy. Then this is when obviously Kate is in like the hospital for the night, having like lashed out at Esther, and John has gone home with Max and Esther, and so Kate is told then she has this rare like growth like deformity where she's actually an adult, not a girl. She's an adult essentially in a little girl's body. She's actually 33 years old, which does explain how she can maybe do some of the things she's been doing over the course of the film. But in any case, that's the twist, and she's told that Esther has been pretending to be an adult for all her life, or for a long, long time actually, as a way to manipulate things. And Kate is told then when she didn't get her own way with the previous family, when she tried to seduce the husband, apparently, that's when she killed them all, burnt the house. So it still doesn't really explain why she's been doing this stuff in a way, why she is unhinged, or unless we're just meant to believe that it's frustration out of the fact that she obviously is essentially an adult, but has the body of a child. So, but it's a little bit weak. It sort of explains some of the other stuff in the film, and they actually have this creepy sort of moment where she tries to seduce poor John, who has hit the bottle as well, and yeah, she dresses all up. It's a very creepy sort of scene, and at first he just tries to let her down lightly, but this is and this plays to the twist because again she's trying to seduce the father of their household. But this is another example which I was talking about earlier, where characters just go from one thing to the next extreme without like missing a beat. And after she like really tries it on with him, he just goes crazy and says, "Oh, I've had enough of this. Go to your room. Tomorrow I'm gonna call like sister, whatever the other sister's name is, because of course Agatha's been killed." And he's just like, "We're gonna discuss your future at this house." And you sort of think, wait a minute, all along you've barely suspected her. You've not suspected her at all. You've kind of talked like the sunshine shines out of her ass, defending her every time Kate makes an accusation. And now suddenly you're jumping to this where, well, we're going to have to discuss your future in this house. And okay, he's right because she is kind of nuts and dangerous, but he doesn't really know that at this point, and he's been treating her like there's nothing wrong with her. So again, it's just an over the top sort of scene, and a lot of the scenes in this film just play like that. They're just very jarring, and just like characters just jump to extremes in a very like unrealistic sort of way. Now, I do have to call a bit of question here with this, with her strength, because she ends up killing John. There's a struggle, and she stabs him. It's quite a brutal scene, actually. Stabs him several times. But I have to, even though it's been revealed that she's really like an adult, she's 33. Not being sexist here, but typically the average man does have more strength than the average woman. It's just a genetic thing. Now, I'm not sure. Again, I think that it might be that they're having, you know, in this case, they are saying she's got like the strength of an adult, but even so, she overpowers him really easily and just goes to town. So I think they do play with the logic of all this, but it obviously all builds to like the Kate character coming home. She gets this information, so she busts out of the hospital and comes home. And again, it does like sort of like descend into like this really dramatic action type film where they're creeping around, and there's a scene in the like greenhouse, and you know, Max, you know, helps the mother, and symbolic stuff because it ends up back on the ice where they almost lost Max once, and they go under the ice at one point, Esther and Kate, and in the end, Kate sort of like overcomes her, and she has like that sort of action movie timeline where Esther says, "Don't kill me, mummy," and Kate's like, "I'm not your fucking mummy," and kicks her back in down, and she's dead. Not the greatest line, but anyway. But that's pretty much the film. So Kate survives along with Max, and Max is a pretty cute kid. I quite liked her. I quite like the actress. I thought she did a good job. And Danny barely survives, but he's in the hospital, so he survives as well. So there you have it. That's Orphan. Not very good. Not very good at all. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. It's not terrible. I've seen worse, but 4 out of 10 for me. So sorry about that. Celine Cliff, I wasn't a fan of Orphan. But I'll be back with another viewer choice review very soon. I'll take a look at the list and I'll pick someone else who like submitted a list and pick one of their choices. And of course, you can continue giving me lists if you want me to review a film or to give a TV show a watch. Then let me know in the description below, in the comments below, I should say. Yeah, let me know what you would like me to review in the future, or you can get me up on Twitter, maybe post some pics on there, and the Twitter link will be in the description. And as I said, I will be back with another viewer's choice review coming up soon. But thanks for listening. Like and subscribe, and you can ding the bell on YouTube to get like new videos, new content. But I hope you're all well and staying safe in these like kind of uncertain times. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.